Charlotte of Mecklenburg Strelitz. Charlotte of Mecklenburg Strelitz, Sophia Charlotte, born on the 19th May 1744, died on the November 17, 1818. Was Queen of Great Britain and Ireland as the wife of George III from their marriage on September 8, 1761 until her death in 1818. As George's wife, she was also Electress of Brunswick-Lüneburg, Hanover, until becoming Queen of Hanover on October 12, 1814. Charlotte was Britain's longest-serving queen consort, serving for 57 years and 70 days. Charlotte was born into the ruling family of Mecklenburg Strelitz, a duchy in northern Germany. In 1760, the young and unmarried George III inherited the British throne. As Charlotte was a minor German princess with no interest in politics, George considered her a suitable consort, and they married in 1761. The marriage lasted 57 years and produced 15 children, 13 of whom survived to adulthood. They included two future British monarchs, George IV and William IV, as well as Charlotte, Princess Royal, who became Queen of Württemberg, and Prince Ernest Augustus, who became King of Hanover. Charlotte was a patron of the arts and an amateur botanist who helped expand Kew Gardens. She introduced the Christmas tree to Britain, decorating one for a Christmas party for children of Windsor in 1800. She was distressed by her husband's bouts of physical and mental illness, which became permanent in later life. She maintained a close relationship with Queen Marie Antoinette of France, and the French Revolution is likely to have enhanced the emotional strain felt by Charlotte. Her eldest son, George, was appointed Prince Regent in 1811 due to the increasing severity of the king's illness. Charlotte died in November 1818 with her son George at her side. George III died a little over a year later, probably unaware of his wife's death. After the onset of his permanent madness in 1811, George III was placed under the guardianship of his wife in accordance with the Regency Bill of 1789. She could not bring herself to visit him very often due to his erratic behavior and occasional violent reactions. It is believed she did not visit him again after June 1812. However, Charlotte remained supportive of her spouse as his illness worsened in old age. While her son, the Prince Regent, wielded the royal power, she was her spouse's legal guardian from 1811 until her death in 1818. Due to the extent of the king's illness, he was incapable of knowing or understanding that she had died. During the regency of her son, Queen Charlotte continued to fill her role as First Lady in royal representation because of the estrangement of the Prince Regent and his spouse. As such, she functioned as the hostess by the side of her son at official receptions, such as the festivities given in London to celebrate the defeat of Emperor Napoleon in 1814. She also supervised the upbringing of her granddaughter, Princess Charlotte of Wales. During her last years, she was met with a growing lack of popularity and was sometimes subjected to demonstrations. After having attended a reception in London on April 29, 1817, she was jeered by a crowd. She told the crowd that it was upsetting to be treated like that after such long service. The Queen died in the presence of her eldest son, the Prince Regent, who was holding her hand as she sat in an armchair at the family's country retreat, Dutch House in Surrey, now known as Kew Palace. She was buried at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. Her husband died just over a year later. She is the longest-serving female consort and second-longest-serving consort in British history, after Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, having served as such from her marriage, on September 8, 1761, to her death. November 17, 1818, a total of 57 years and 70 days. On the day before her death, the Queen dictated her will to her husband's secretary, Sir Herbert Taylor, appointing him and Lord Arden as her executors. At her death, her personal estate was valued at less than £140,000, equivalent to £10,100,000 in 2019, with her jewels accounting for the greater portion of her assets. In her will, proven at Doctors' Commons on January 8, 1819, the Queen bequeathed her husband the jewels she had received from him, unless he remained in his state of insanity, in which case the jewels were to become an heirloom of the House of Hanover. Other jewels, including some gifted to the Queen by the Nawab of Arcot, were to be evenly distributed among her surviving daughters. The furnishings and fixtures at the royal residence at Frogmore, along with live and dead stock on the estates, were bequeathed to her daughter Augusta Sophia along with the Frogmore property, unless its maintenance would prove too expensive for her daughter, in which case it was to revert to the crown. Her youngest daughter Sophia inherited the royal lodge. Certain personal assets that the queen had brought from Mecklenburg Strelitz were to revert to the senior branch of that dynasty, while the remainder of her assets, including her books, linen, art objects, and china, were to be evenly divided among her surviving daughters. At the queen's death, her eldest son, the Prince Regent, claimed Charlotte's jewels, and on his death they were in turn claimed by his heir, William IV. On William's death, Charlotte's bequest then sparked a protracted dispute between her granddaughter Queen Victoria, who claimed the jewels as the property of the British Crown, and Charlotte's now eldest surviving son Ernest, who claimed the jewels by right of being the most senior male member of the House of Hanover. The dispute would not be resolved in Ernest's lifetime. Eventually in 1858, over 20 years after the death of William IV and nearly 40 years after Charlotte's death, the matter was decided in favor of Ernest's son George, upon which Victoria had the jewels given into the custody of the Hanoverian ambassador. The rest of Charlotte's property was sold at auction from May to August 1819. Her clothes, furniture, and even her snuff were sold by Christie's. It is highly unlikely that her husband ever knew of her death. He died blind, deaf, lame, and insane 14 months later. Thanks for watching HerStory channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.